Hello there, all you lovely people. Welcome back to another episode of my ongoing video series which explores male issues in and around the world.
Woman! Whoa, man! Whoa, man!
So today I want to look at how being gay, and particularly being a gay man, is perceived alongside that of being a gay woman. And just based on certain research and articles that I've found whilst kind of exploring this topic, it's kind of come to my attention that it is potentially harder to be a gay man in the world than it is to be a lesbian woman, just based on how both men and women perceive being a gay man in the world. And that seems like such a broad and kind of unexplained statement. So that's why we're going to kind of dig into it a little bit in this video and just kind of unearth what I mean and just kind of open up a conversation around this and just kind of explore whether or not you think I'm correct in that assertion, or whether the facts I'm going to present are correct, or whether you think it's different based on another perspective. But this is what these conversations are about. It's to open up the topic and explore it together and allow ourselves both to be right, to be wrong, and just kind of create a new and honest dialogue. So let's go.
Whoa, man!
It's the privilege that you get from being around, people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, that allows you to kind of realise that you really grow up, or can so easily grow up, in a culture, in a society that fears something just based on the fact that you don't really know what it means, what it means to be gay, what it means to be a gay man. And, sexuality is a huge part of who we are in our life. And to be able to explore that as a straight person is so beneficial, but I honestly don't think a lot of straight people get to experience that level of exploration that a lot of people do from the LGBTQ plus community, because we don't necessarily feel that in-depth need to explore who we are, because we as straight people growing up already know that it's okay to be straight. So we don't feel the need to explore that and potentially run away from that notion, because it's okay to be us. We feel comfortable in a world that automatically accepts being straight. But it's partly why I kind of wanted to explore what it means to be a gay man in the world, and whether or not it is harder to be a gay man, because as I've looked through certain research and certain articles that have been written, it does appear to me that gay men get it harder than gay women. So let's explore that finally.
Whoa, man!
So we're going to look at the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885. And Section 11 of this piece of legislation was used to send Oscar Wilde to prison back in 1895 for committing acts of gross indecency with male persons. But due to the ambiguity in the legislation about what constituted a homosexual act, men who engaged in any homosexual activity were very easily blackmailed, and it became known as the Blackmailers Charter. The legislation, also known as the Laboucherie Amendment, remained in English law until 1967. Now, can you imagine that? Like, a law that was passed in 1885 all the way up until 1967 was used to put gay men in prison for nothing more than being gay. And the fact that someone who was, if you don't know who Oscar Wilde is, he was a brilliant playwright, author, a creative, and after his imprisonment, he was shunned by society. He ended. He was shunned by society, and he ended up being bankrupt, and he died, alone. I'm not entirely sure, but he wasn't in the place he should have been had he not went to prison, and had he not been outed so publicly and blatantly through a law that should never have been in the first place. And Going back to the law and what this law meant, in 1921 MPs attempted to add a clause to a new criminal law amendment bill being debated at the time, which would have made lesbianism into a criminal offence. Any act of gross indecency between female persons shall be a misdemeanour and punishable in the same manner as any such act committed by male persons under Section 11 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act 1885. However, this was ultimately dropped out of concern that legislation would only draw attention to the offence and encourage women to explore their sexuality. So again, it's just this notion of gay men versus gay women. You know, it took up until 1921 for this law to be debated whether or not gay women should be prosecuted. And, you know, that law never got passed. And, you know, again, this isn't a kind of dick measuring contest for who's got it harder, as much as it's just shining a light on society's views of gay men versus gay women. And when you think about the fact that, you know, it's MPs, it's people we elect, it's people we put into power who are there to kind of uphold laws based on that of society and, you know, our culture and how we see the world and how things change. You know, they're there on behalf of us. You know, are these laws a reflection of who we are as a society? You know, should we reflect back onto ourselves and think, you know, back then when this law was put into practice, when this law was in place, how those laws were, are they a true reflection of the society of those days, you know?
Oh, man.
Within that law, the sentence settled on was 2 years imprisonment. So anyone who was committed of and, you know, found guilty of such a crime for being a homosexual male was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, as well as hard labour, which entailed repetitive manual task. What is wrong with my speech today? Come on! The sentence settled on was 2 years imprisonment, which also entailed hard labour, which kind of encompassed manual tasks such as walking a treadmill and picking apart the fibres from ropes. So if we're trying to find any silver lining amongst all this, which there aren't many to be found, I suppose if you are in prison for 2 years, you're maybe going to come out with calves of steel and you can walk 3,000 miles and you know reap the benefits. You know, you're going to come out, yes, you might be a criminal, but at least you can walk the fells and the hills with calves of steel, take in the air and trudge around with your head not necessarily held high, but you're walking, you're a beast in the fells, you're a beast up the mountains, you can walk like a motherfucker. And you can pick apart rope fibres really well. I'm not entirely sure when that's going to come in handy. But yeah, at least you can walk well, at least you can walk far.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
So just a brief overview of the Criminal Law Amendment Act, which we've been talking about. And I found numbers that kind of give a varied estimate of how many men were kind of imprisoned or sentenced through this act. And it states that 50,000 to 100,000 men were found guilty. And countless numbers were sentenced to imprisonment or chemical castration. And I think one man that we all should know pretty well who was forced through chemical castration was Alan Turing, who broke the Enigma code during World War II, which allowed us to ultimately win the war. And, you know, he was a war hero. And, you know, he was outed for being gay and forced through chemical castration, which could have even led him towards his untimely suicide. I could never imagine what it must have felt like to go through and be outed in such a way that, one, you were outed without your permission, your consent. You know, you might have not been ready to kind of come out as gay, but you had no choice because you were then made a criminal for being homosexual. And yes, over time, men were, had their convictions lifted, but still, that's in between 50,000 and 100,000 men who had to go through this awful thing that must have been such a burden and had such a negative effect on their lives, to be criminalised for something just based on the fact that it was who they were. You know, imagine that. I could never, which is why it's important for me and for us to kind of explore and discuss these topics, because, you know, things like this still go on today. There will be laws in certain countries which I've kind of not looked into, but there will still be a lot. Well, in fact, I know that there's still a lot of countries that are against homosexuality. There are vast amounts of men who are killed for being homosexuals. And, you know, we still need to have these conversations, and we still need to look back to the past and realise how far we've come, but also realise how much more work we've still got to do in order to kind of make a world a better place for the LGBTQ plus community. Oh, man. So coming back to how gay men are viewed in society within our time, within present day, a new study exploring the attitudes towards non-heterosexual men and women in 23 Western and non-Western countries found lesbians are more accepted than gay men around the world. The study found that gay men are disliked more than lesbian women in every country that was tested, according to the study, which was conducted by 3 New York University psychologists and published in the December issue of the Journal of Social Psychology and Personality Science. In all 23 countries studied, the report found that gay men are rated more negatively than lesbian women, and that trend was almost entirely driven by the views of men, except in Poland, Hungary and Russia, where women also assigned gay men high negative ratings. In the United States, men who are anti-gays largely direct their prejudice towards gay men, while women who are anti-gays direct their prejudice more equally towards gay men and gay women, the study found. So within that, it's interesting to kind of see that within these 23 countries studied, that it kind of shows that, you know, our views towards gay men versus gay women err on the side of, you know, a more negative effect towards that of gay men. And, you know, it's within studies like this that we need to kind of look at ourselves and kind of think, well, why is that? How do we view gay women? Why do we view gay women differently? And, you know, it's a lot of self-reflection that I think we all kind of need to do in ourselves to kind of stop and think, do we maybe harbour those same, you know, disparities, whether or not we are kind of for or against gay people, you know, within this kind of subtext of, you know, systemic kind of views. You know, how do we view gay men versus gay women? You know, we need to kind of ask those questions ourselves, because those views will run through every facet of our lives. You know, be it in work, be it within the friends we make, the kind of people we hang around, how we talk about gay men and women. You know, it will have an effect, and that effect will ripple through our culture and our society. And, you know, one thing I did find interesting within this study as well is that the study's findings also suggest that men are more likely to be both the targets and perpetrators of sexual prejudice. That kind of suggests that, you know, as men, we maybe do harbour a lot more hatred towards other gay men and, you know, what it means to be gay. And that, in a sense, kind of tells me that we are the ones that need to do possibly more work than women, because we are the ones who are kind of perpetrating and targeting sexual prejudice in such a way. And, you know, is that because, like I mentioned at the start, that we have a certain kind of like fear or hatred that we grow up with? Are there things that we don't do when we're younger to allow ourselves to come to terms with and be a little bit more comfortable around what it means to be gay and what it means to kind of be an ally for gay men in our society and our culture? I think so. I think we need to do an extremely, we need to do a lot of work, and we need to kind of come together and, again, discuss and open these conversations and explore what that means. You know, we need to have conversations with our friends. We need to kind of open the door to be able to have these conversations. We need to open the door to be able to have these conversations and understand, you know, what our kind of what our fears are. You know, where did they come from? Is it stuff that we can learn when we're younger that will allow us to develop a more positive outlook and approach and understanding towards gay men and what it means to be gay? Who knows what direction we need to go in? I mean, it definitely needs to be forward. But you know, in regard to education, understanding, you know, we need to start having these conversations. We need to discuss, and we need to discuss without fear of being wrong. And if you think I've been wrong at all in this video, tell me, let me know, out me. Let's kind of understand and learn from one another. It's important that we do that. Oh, man. I personally think, and now we're coming to the end of this video, you know, I personally think, just based on the things I've read and the facts that have came out and the kind of interesting anecdotes that we've explored, it seems to me that, you know, we as men, and speaking from a male perspective, and wanting to be an ally and trying my best to be an ally for gay men, you know, we need to, from a young age, to free ourselves of any kind of fear or negativity that we might have towards what it means to be gay. And for me, a way to do that is to facilitate and open up the discussion around what it means to be gay. You know, it was a privilege for me to kind of be able to kind of grow up within a creative society and a creative culture where I was around all these beautiful people who I could befriend and have conversations with, and they were so kind to me, because there were so many times where what my views were wrong, but I never felt that I was harbouring some sort of hatred towards somebody, as much as I was just ill-informed of certain topics and issues that I was talking about, and they kind of held my hand and talked me through it and kind of allowed me to understand things from their point of view. And these are conversations, and these are kind of ways in which we need to kind of guide people and become, you know, a friend rather than a foe. You know, we need to kind of come together and just accept that, you know, being on the right and wrong side, we can both be right and wrong in our viewpoints, but we just need to kind of come together in a more comfortable scenario where we can grow and learn together and kind of understand that issues in relation to this kind of hatred and negativity that gay men seem to face more than gay women, you know, we've still got a lot of work to do, and I'm pretty sure that we can all do it together if we can just facilitate these more beautiful and honest conversations without prejudice. You know, prejudice is a big word. It runs through history, you know, prejudice towards gay men, prejudice towards having different points of view. Let's just kind of like, you know, soften this prejudice through being able to just kind of speak freely and free of judgment and kind of come together and just explore and grow together in a more comfortable and safe environment. So, please like, comment, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. God, I sound like a real YouTuber now. But please, you know, let's just discuss and open this conversation. If you think this conversation was insightful and helpful, I'm so happy. If you think I could have done it better, please tell me. If you just want to explore the topic more, please leave a comment. I want to kind of create and have more conversations. And on that note, it's been a pleasure, and have a positive and beautiful day, and I'll see you again soon.